get to work on my parade wave this morning, ladies and gentlemen, as I practice for all of the royalty that are in my backyard. Welcome to another edition of Patio Productions, where we do things from my backyard that have to do with calculus. Ladies and gents, we are doing our super short videos on each of the units as put forth by College Board so that you can trigger some memories and go ahead and do the free response questions to practice just by unit. So let's pull up. Let's get moving here. Let me share my screen, choose the appropriate thing, and let's go ahead and talk about the PowerPoint for this lovely day. So Unit 3, as put forth by College Board, it actually has less topics in it, but I feel like they're more like meatier topics, right? Okay, some meatier topics that are going to allow us to talk about some derivatives, okay? So we've already talked about limits and continuity. We talked about derivative basics in our previous unit. And so now we're going to do like a little bit more, some fun things, some more complicated things, one might say, with differentiation. So let's get jamming here. Okay, so one of the things, this is actually all the topics. They're right here listed on the side, but I wanted to give you some information about each of the things. So one of the ones is the chain rule. Chain rule, chain rule. What's the best sound for a chain rule? Let me think. I want a good chain rule sound. Chain rule should be this. This should be chain rule. Because it's so amazing, okay? I was going to do like the evil laugh. Chain rule. I don't know, but it didn't feel appropriate. So we're going to go with this. Chain rule. So exciting. So chain rule, if you remember, is when you have a function inside of a function, okay? And remember, we like to say things in English. So the chain rule says you take the derivative of the outside, leave the inside alone, and then multiply by the derivative of the inside. This chain rule is probably going to be everywhere, okay? With our chain rule, you have to think to yourself, how could they like hide it in stuff? Could they write it in notation? Because I feel like that's what they're going to do, is probably like some notation stuff, but that's all right. We like notation. We can totally work with it. Okay, implicit differentiation. So for implicit differentiation, I decided to just pull some information from our notes, and I'm going to just kind of like go to a whole new slide. So we did implicit differentiation when equations were not of the form y equals, and there was like y's mixed in with them. And so implicit differentiation, we're supposed to differentiate both sides of the equation with respect to x. What that meant was that when there was not an x, we had to multiply our derivative by dy dx. And then we were sort of like collecting up all those dy dx's and solving for it. Sometimes you have to do things like with product rule or quotient rule or even chain rule on this one. So like if there's like an x times a y, you have to treat that as a product rule. And then anytime you're taking the derivative of the y part, then you'll do a dy dx. You collect all the terms that have the dy dx on one side of the equation, and then you isolate that dy dx and solve for it, and that's how you get a derivative if there's something where it's all tangled up and there's x's and y's mixed together. Okay. When we do inverse trig functions, there was actually 6 of them, right? Woo! And they were a little bit hard to remember, but I think really the AP test really just does 3 of them. So I would just like to remind you of 3 of them. Oh, just kidding. I skipped one. What is wrong with me? Let's go back. Okay, we're going to do inverse functions first. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Fox, try to pay attention. Okay, so on the inverse functions, I was just so excited to do inverse trig that I just like jumped to it. Okay, so for our inverse functions, remember guys, what would happen is that you probably started with some sort of a coordinate that they gave you with the inverse. You are supposed to flip those coordinates because that's what the inverse does. It switches the x's and the y's, and then you were probably able to more, it'd be easier to take the derivative of the original guy, you evaluate it at this original x value, and then whatever you get for this answer right here, the reciprocal of that answer is the tangent, slope, the derivative for the inverse guy at the value of y. And I remember that we've done lots and lots and lots and lots of these, and we're still getting better at them, right? So this is an opportunity to get some more stuff done. Super exciting. Okay, now let's do those inverse trig. So for our inverse trig, ladies and gentlemen, okay, there's really only 3 of them, yes, that we need to remember. So For inverse trig, sine inverse of x's derivative is 1 over rad 1 minus x squared. Similar to that is cosine inverse, which is the negative of that. So you really only have to memorize one of those, right? Like super exciting, super easy. And then our just should be your favorite one. Like I'm not even kidding. We used it so much when we did our chapter 10 with our series. 1 over 1 plus x squared is in fact the derivative of tangent inverse of x, 1 over 1 plus x squared. So that is pretty amazing. Okay, another thing I want us to become just a reminder of is when we do higher order derivatives, just the notation is really what it's about, okay? So, you can only do so many like primes. So like y prime, y double prime, y triple prime. At a certain point, they stopped writing primes and they would do something in parentheses. Like usually when you got to like about the fourth derivative, they stopped doing the primes because imagine all those little tick marks would look like it's like raining or something like next to your function. That'd be super weird. So then they'll start putting it in parentheses. So whenever you see something that looks like this right here, so f to the parenthesis n of x, that means it's talking about higher order derivatives, like maybe the 5th derivative or the 10th derivative. The other notation that you should become aware of and that you should be able to use is when they do d squared y over dx squared. Remember in English, we kind of said this was like the second derivative of y with respect to x both times, just to kind of like get that English version in your head. That's it, guys. Those were the important things that they did in Unit 3. And really, truly, guys, okay, chain rule is probably the most important one right here, right? So you really got to have that chain rule down. Think about the chain rule in all its different forms. They could do it with actual functions. They could do it with notation. Do not be afraid of the notation, okay? Love the notation. Embrace the notation. Yes, love it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. You need to make sure that you appreciate it. Okay, what you're doing for your homework today is you're going to do 3 FRQs, just like we've been doing. You were going to do a part A question, and then there's a part B question. I think there's 2 of them for part B. I, of course, have attached the answers for you to score them. Remember, after you work on them diligently, it's fine if you work with other people, but make sure you're trying to own the information because this is about you preparing, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that you're supposed to go into the journal and then write me some bullet points. Remember, it's not about making paragraphs, right? Just maybe some bullet points or something about what you knew, what you need to, like what you struggled with or what you would need to revisit. And that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. So remember that journal entry is, in fact, going to be due on Friday. Okay, so Friday is the day that you're going to submit that journal entry. You're using the extra assignment that I created. That's the Monday through Friday one to do that journal. And I think that's it. Okay, so hopefully you're having some success with your FRQs. And then maybe if you're not having success, you're at least writing down what you need to practice because that's what it is. We're just trying to clean up our work. And yeah, so another quick video. I think this one was pretty short. I'm going to do my fanfare music and my lovely parade wave to exit out of here. And so I hope you guys have a great day. Bye. See ya. Wrist, elbow, elbow, wrist, elbow, elbow, wrist.